good trading entry should leave you with the thought that there's either nothing to do, or all you can do is go long, or all you can do is go short. So if there's ever a time in the context of a trade that I could think, oh, put or call, long or short, I know I don't have a great setup. So with that in mind, let's take a look at two of the setups from this morning in the NASDAQ and the S&P. Now, I shared these because, well, two things. One, these are the trades that we put on today. And two, there are characteristics of this trade that can be repeated, right? That's the whole point of looking back on a chart and saying, all right, what element of this can I recognize and then do again? So really simple. I like to trade the ES when there's clarity in either or both, right? The NQ or the YM. And this is going to be SPY, QQQ, DIA. By the way, I like to trade the YM when it and the RTY are tracking together, right? So there's a lot of these kind of connective things we can look at. In this case, being long the NAS and then also being long the SPY means that there are really 3 or 4 pieces that are in agreement. The XLC, the XLK, the XLF, and the XLV. Now we can look at these 4 sector ETFs, say, hey, are these indicating the NASDAQ is going to be strong and or the S&P? And when those pieces of the index are in agreement, this is where something like an NQ and a QQQ or ES and SPY will work. After that, it's a really simple setup, right? And I'll walk you through the way it looked this morning. And if we see something like this again tomorrow, I'll absolutely take it. Some of what we want to do as traders is going to be, in some ways, from a sentiment level, dictated by what we saw earlier in the day. So pre-market, there was definitely a green trend. At 8:30, we saw that shift to neutral. But this is, yes, while a neutral trend, it's really bullish neutral. The trend that preceded it was up, so I'm going to be a little bit more biased to the upside. One of the difficult things about today is the NASDAQ and the S&P, for that matter, were trading below their previous session close, which tends to, clearly it's no guarantee, but tends to indicate that there's going to be a little bit more pressure on the index. But here's where that very binary 0 or 1, either I can get long a call or get long a put, or there's nothing to do. And that's where down in this area, which is what synced up with this alert for QQQ, the only thing I could do was either get long a call or nothing. And you might say, well, Rog, what about get long a put, right? Why does it have to be get long a call, right? Why not get long a put? Getting long a put would be up in here. So green zone is going to be preferential for calls. Getting long a put is going to be preferential up in the red zone, right? That's resistance. This is support based on the hourly price movement range. So all I can do in this area, and it's not just the green zone, although that's a big part of it. Green zone, neutral to bullish environment as we were trading down into that area. And right in here, I've got an oversold slow stochastic. Those 3 criteria lend themselves not to an ideal buy. An ideal buy is still above the previous session close. That would be a 4th and really great factor to have, but we didn't have that. 3 out of 4 ain't bad. So if I'm thinking about all the little check boxes that I'm able to tick off, right? This, right. The previous session close was not one of them. Still, either long or nothing. And the same thing went for the SPY, ES, SPX. Same thing. If you can recognize the setup, if you can recognize even the preamble, green, 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 right, gives way to yellow. The bell rings right in here. First thing I can do, right? And granted, this thing went red for a very little bit of time, but as we sunk down into this range, we were still neutral, right? We were still neutral. Oversold stochastic, neutral environment, green zone, right? So all I can do is long or nothing. And when I have the XLF or XLV, at least neutral, to oversold themselves, and the indication is most likely we're going to move higher. When the NASDAQ's going to move higher, the S&P will typically move with it unless the Dow is really falling to pieces. Right? So those are all the connective threads that we want to keep an eye on. And this is from a day trading perspective, whether it's the ES or SPY, whether it's the NQ, MNQ, or even the QQQ, these patterns work all the same. I would definitely recommend to new futures traders start off with something slower, liquid, and low cost, like the QQQ. Get the feel for sometimes a very quick moves in the futures, and then move up from ETF options to NASDAQ options, or even the NASDAQ futures themselves. All right. So ultimately, we just trended all darn day, which suits me just fine. When do I have higher expectation for follow through? When we can establish price action above the previous session close and this zone that we endearingly call the Pingala. If you haven't checked out the conversation on these, check out any one of the free videos where I go through my day trading process. So once we got above the two P's, previous session close and Pingala, you can see that happened first, and then we ended up with that transition from neutral to bullish trend, and it just kept moving. So those little cues along the way, if you can pick up these little cues of the setups, these are very, very repeatable approaches. And we're winding down October, and I'm looking forward to more setups like this come November.